Welcome everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about Yuji's true curse technique and why it's likely something much scarier than the shrine or the blood manipulation. I'll also talk about how Kenjaku was able to get the soul of Sukuna's dead twin, as well as just a bunch of other crazy stuff going on in the series right now. Previously, we talked about how Yuji is going to mix his soul abilities with his Black Flash Fist. And in this chapter, it was confirmed that Yuji is already doing this, and that it's the reason why Sukuna is not able to go back to full power. Yuji is buffing himself, and at the same time, he's reducing Sukuna's output and overall cursed energy. So as Sukuna is getting weaker, Yuji is getting stronger, and it seems that in the past few chapters, Yuji has actually been fighting on the same level as Sukuna, if not surpassing him. Although Sukuna still has so many tools, that if he could just recover his output back and his reverse curse technique, on paper, Sukuna should still overwhelm Yuji. And that's kind of what we see in this chapter, except Sukuna forces it a little bit against Yuji here. It's interesting to see that Miguel is still in the picture. Miguel didn't really do like anything. He didn't even have a proper fight with Sukuna, only literally a couple of panels. So when you're reading this chapter, it just comes up immediately out of nowhere. This domain expansion is the first thing you see. Sukuna is once again able to bring back his malevolent shrine, and it was apparently Black Flash that allowed Sukuna to obtain his domain back. This is really weird, and it also says that Sukuna lost no output on his domain or range. It's like, these binding vows, man. We really need an explanation on what these binding vows really are, because it doesn't really seem like there's a heavy price to pay for these binding vows. We also got a lot more information on how reverse curse technique works. Ieri said that she converts cursed energy into blood, and Choso said that his body allows him to convert cursed energy to blood. And since his technique gives him this unique body, he's apparently able to learn reverse curse technique much easier than a regular person would. And Yuji would also be able to gain the same abilities by eating the paintings of his brothers, or whatever they are. And by the way, this also makes the theory that Yuji has this consumption curse technique more likely. A curse technique that whatever you eat, you're able to use those abilities. And since Yuji is related to Sukuna in a weird way, whether Yuji is actually the twin or then it's Yuji's dad or whatever it is, we know that in Jujutsu Kaisen, twins are treated almost as the same person. So this is one very likely reason for Yuji to get Sukuna's technique. And full disclosure, I heard this great theory from Weeb Commander, who is one of my favorite anime channels on YouTube. And by the way, this would also kind of explain Sukuna's fire arrows and all those other open techniques. And that's going to be really fascinating, because I think if Yuji has the shrine, then he's also going to have those abilities. He experienced Sukuna use them. But it'll definitely be really interesting to see how Yuji is going to survive this next attack. And most interestingly, how is Yuji going to deal with the world dismantle? Because I think that has to be Sukuna's strongest ability. So if Yuji has some kind of consumption curse technique, it would explain why he's able to gain the abilities of those cursed wounds that he ate, but other people can't. And if Uyui has control over souls like this, maybe now I can kind of understand what might have happened with Kenjaku in order to take Sukuna's twin, who presumably died when he was eaten by Sukuna. I don't know if he did it like in the form of Sukuna's finger, because as you know, the body and soul are kind of connected, so if he takes a piece of Sukuna's body, it might have that soul that Sukuna ate lingering within like a Sukuna finger or something. Or Kenjaku just straight up found a way to harness the soul. Kusakabe is complimenting Yuji that the speed of his growth as a sorcerer has been insane. And obviously, why not? He's the chosen one, literally. But Jujutsu Kaisen is actually very unique because it's, even though Yuji is starting to get the main character treatment, it's not really certain because Gege is kinda random. So basically no one is safe, even Yuji is not safe. And there's certainly still a chance that Sukuna could win. So Kusakabe is like, do you know why you've been growing so fast? And Yuji is like, must be my innate talent. He's like, I was meant to be him, you know? But Kusakabe immediately says it's Sukuna. So I assume these people don't know that Yuji and Sukuna are like twins. And they're like, if you do certain things over and over again, eventually it's gonna become muscle memory. And this explains how Yuji is obviously able to get Sukuna's curse technique. And through this, it might mean that Megumi is gonna be powered up if he gets released from Sukuna. And also this means that Yuji can realistically get a domain, since Sukuna has used a domain when he was with Yuji, as well as the fire arrow. But I actually don't think Yuji is going to have the same domain as Sukuna. So anyway, everyone in Jujutsu High is basically going to be doing the same thing, and I guess they'll probably be swapping into Yuta or Hakari. It must be nice to know what it feels like to be Satoru Gojo, because this was probably back when Gojo was still alive, by the way. So some of these people, maybe even Miwa, got to experience what it's like to be Satoru Gojo. That's pretty cool, you know? Even if Yuji is the chosen one. With Ui's curse technique, you could have someone else be Yuji for a little bit and know what it feels like to have Sukuna's abilities. So this is the way they decided to practice, and this is the way they have been cheating, apparently. I remember I kind of made a theory on how they cheated. You know, now that I read about it in hindsight, it just seems so obvious. And I'm like, I should have known that this is how they cheated. I'm gonna need to go back and see exactly what I said in that prediction video of mine. By the way, Mei looks so much younger in the manga than she does in the anime for whatever reason. To be honest, I feel like they done her so dirty in the second season of the anime. She literally looks middle-aged. I don't know if she's that old. So there's actually some downsides to this ability. You can't just keep spamming it. In a single month, the limit for swapping is twice per person. And so that's kind of the explanation on how Yuji is able to use the new Shadow Star simple domain now. And I guess this is going to protect him from Sukuna's domain, but it's actually kind of wild to see Yuji inside of Sukuna's domain trying to survive, in a similar way to what was going on with Gojo. And I'll talk about this when I do my Yuji's domain video. But just for those who've watched this far, I'll tell you that even if Yuji does get a domain, Sukuna's open domain is going to shred it immediately. So there's one thing that Yuji is going to have to do to prevent that, and I'm gonna talk about it in that video. Hopefully I don't forget to talk about it. So Yuji's like, I can tell that the domain is incomplete, and he's like, there must be an opening somewhere I can endure. So at this point Yuji's kind of barely hanging on, and Sukuna is kind of back to smiling again. He thinks it's all good. But Yuji is definitely looking like he's very scared of Sukuna's domain. You can't be the strongest if you're scared of the domain, you know? And you have to have your own domain to be considered the strongest. You can't win by a technicality, you know? Like, oh, technically Sukuna would have won if he was actually full power. So in order for Yuji to become the strongest, he's for sure going to need a domain. So apparently Sukuna also kind of altered his domain, and he gave it a shell this time through some kind of binding vow. And keep in mind, Sukuna had actually taken a binding vow to take the shell away from the domain. So did he just like recall that binding vow, or did he make a new binding vow that, oh, can I have my shell back? Either way, it's very interesting to see Sukuna's domain with a shell, at least if I'm understanding this correctly. But Sukuna can only keep it up for 99 seconds. That sounds like a very, very long time. But I guess this is not really Dragon Balls where people have an entire fight within a second. These guys take their time, and 5 minutes goes by quickly sometimes in these fights. I'm also kind of confused, like, did Sukuna's domain seize everybody, like Maki, all these sorcerers who are helping Yuji here? Are they all within Malevolent Shrine now? And it also kind of said that it would have been otherwise impossible to seize Maki Zenin. So does having a shell now allow Sukuna to include Maki in the domain? This is a weird statement, because we know that if Sukuna uses Cleave, I believe, instead of Dismantle, he can also just destroy inanimate objects like buildings and cars and everything that doesn't really have cursed energy. So he didn't necessarily need to seize Maki. And even if you have a barrier on your domain, you're not really going to have Maki unless he uses Cleave inside his domain rather than Dismantle. But if those guys are also in the domain and everybody's caught inside, I have no idea how they survive. But Yuji, even though he lost a leg and he's looking really beat up, he's like, we endured it. Again, this is not really what the strongest is going to say, that, oh, we barely survived after using our simple domain against Sukuna's superior Malevolent Shrine. So Yuji's for sure gonna get a domain soon. But this is the moment. Sukuna is like, furnace, open. And he finally just breaks out the fire right after the domain breaks. The flames of certain death To think that Yuji would push Sukuna this far, as to using an ability that he didn't even consider using against Gojo. Now it could be because Gojo has the infinity and he just thought that these abilities wouldn't even work on him. Although after Gojo's defeat, it was said that Sukuna didn't even use all of his abilities, so he wasn't going all out. That means Sukuna could have used them. And also another problem with Sukuna not using all his abilities or not going all out, Sukuna has kept spamming what should be his strongest ability by far, which is the world-cutting dismantle. Whatever these flames do, there's no way they should be on the level of the world-cutting dismantle, right? And yet it was still said that Sukuna wasn't really going all out when he's spamming his strongest attack constantly. But I'm definitely super hyped to find out what this ability actually does, and just how powerful is it. And finally, will Yuji also have this ability or be able to counter it? Either way, that's it for this video. Please drop a sub if you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one.